If Thrawn's core philosophy is that art is the ultimate diagnostic tool for military intelligence, then the practice of that philosophy is the decoding of the geometry of conquest. This is where Thrawn moves from the broad understanding of a culture's soul to the precise tactical application of that understanding on the battlefield. This is where he isolates specific brushstrokes and spatial arrangements in a piece of art and uses them to map a commander's tactical reflexes to predict their every move in the heat of battle. This is where he analyzes the link between a culture's preference for symmetry or chaos in their creative expression and their predictability under battlefield stress. This is where he identifies the aesthetic vulnerabilities that signal a leader's inability to adapt to unconventional maneuvers and uses those vulnerabilities to win wars before a single shot is fired. This is the heart of Thrawn's tactical genius, the precise, almost mathematical system that turns a painting into a battle plan, a sculpture into a blueprint for victory, a piece of art into a weapon more powerful than any Star Destroyer in the Imperial fleet. To understand how this system works, we must first break down what Thrawn is looking for when he studies a piece of art. He is not just looking at the subject matter, the story that the art is telling, the explicit message that the artist is trying to convey. He is looking at the structure of the art itself, the geometry of the composition, the way the artist uses space, line, shape, color, symmetry, and chaos. The small, almost imperceptible choices that the artist makes without even thinking about them. The subconscious decisions that reveal the deepest parts of their mind, their personality, their tactical instincts. For Thrawn, every brushstroke is a window into the artist's reflexes. Every spatial arrangement is a map of how they will organize their forces on the battlefield. Every choice between symmetry and chaos is a predictor of how they will react when their plans fall apart, when they are under stress, when the battle does not go the way they expected. This is not guesswork. This is not intuition. This is a precise, repeatable scientific system that Thrawn has refined over decades of military service, tested in hundreds of battles across the galaxy, and proven correct every single time. The first layer of this system is Thrawn's ability to isolate specific artistic choices and map them directly to a commander's tactical reflexes. We see this most clearly in his study of Sabine Wren's art in Star Wars Rebels and how he uses it to predict her tactical decisions in battle. Sabine is not just an artist. She is also the weapons expert and primary tactical strategist for the Ghost Crew's ground missions. She designs the plans for almost every attack the rebels launch on Imperial facilities. She builds the explosives and weapons they use. She leads the ground teams in combat. Her tactical mind is directly reflected in her art, and Thrawn sees that connection more clearly than anyone else ever could. For example, Thrawn notices that in almost all of Sabine's art, she uses dynamic, asymmetrical compositions with multiple focal points, with lines that lead the eye in unexpected directions, with no single fixed center of gravity. She rarely uses straight lines, or perfect symmetry, or rigid, structured compositions. Her art is chaotic, unpredictable, creative, and always breaking the traditional rules of design. From this single artistic choice, Thrawn is able to map Sabine's tactical reflexes with perfect accuracy. He deduces that Sabine will never use a rigid, symmetrical battle plan, that she will always favor asymmetrical, hit-and-run tactics, that she will always include multiple layers of deception in her plans, that she will always have an unexpected escape route, a backup plan that no one else sees coming. He deduces that she will never fight a battle on the enemy's terms, that she will always find a way to change the rules of engagement, to turn the Imperial strength against them, to use unconventional tactics that no Imperial officer would ever expect. This is not a vague generalization. Thrawn uses this insight to predict Sabine's exact moves in battle, down to the smallest detail. In Star Wars Rebels Season 3, Episode 10, An Inside Man, the Ghost Crew launches a mission to infiltrate the Imperial fuel depot on Lothal to steal fuel for the Rebel Alliance. Sabine designs the plan for the mission, and true to her artistic style, it is an asymmetrical, unconventional plan with multiple layers of deception. The rebels use an Imperial informant inside the depot to smuggle them in. They disguise themselves as Imperial workers. They plant explosives on the fuel tanks as a distraction, and they use the chaos of the explosion to steal the fuel and escape. Every other Imperial officer would have expected a direct assault on the depot or a simple hijacking of a fuel transport. Thrawn expects exactly the plan that Sabine designs because he has studied her art and he knows her tactical reflexes. He knows that she will use deception and misdirection, that she will infiltrate the depot from the inside, that she will use a distraction to cover her real objective. So, he sets a trap that aligns perfectly with Sabine's tactical style. He allows the informant to feed the rebels information about the depot, he lets them infiltrate the facility, he lets them plant the explosives, and he waits until they are in the middle of the mission to spring the trap, surrounding them with stormtroopers, cutting off their escape routes exactly as he predicted they would move. The rebels only escape because of a last-minute intervention from their informant, not because Thrawn's prediction was wrong. He knew exactly what Sabine would do, exactly how she would structure the mission, exactly what her tactical reflexes would be, all from studying the geometry of her art. This ability to map artistic choices to tactical reflexes is not limited to Sabine Wren or to human commanders. Thrawn applies the system to every species, every culture, every commander he faces, across the entire galaxy. In the canonical novel Thrawn, Treason, written by Timothy Zahn, Thrawn faces off against the Commenori, a species of raiders that have been attacking Imperial supply convoys in the Outer Rim. The Commenori are a nomadic species, with no fixed homeworld, no centralized government, no formal military structure. The Imperial Navy has been unable to stop their raids because the Commenori use unpredictable, hit-and-run tactics. They never stay in one place for long, and they have no fixed bases or supply lines that the Empire can target. The Imperial commanders assigned to stop them have spent months studying the Commenori's attack patterns, their ship capabilities, their raiding tactics, the standard data points that every Imperial officer is trained to focus on. But they have made no progress because they do not understand the Commenori's culture, their values, their tactical instincts. They only know what the Commenori have done in the past, not what they will do in the future. Thrawn takes a completely different approach. Instead of studying the Commenori's attack patterns, he studies the art that they paint on the hulls of their starships. Every Commenori raider ship is covered in intricate, swirling paintings, with no straight lines, no symmetry, no fixed patterns. The paintings are constantly changing, evolving, with every raid the ship undertakes. The Imperial officers dismiss these paintings as nothing more than random graffiti, the meaningless scribbles of a primitive species. Thrawn sees them for what they really are, a window into the Commenori's tactical mind. He notices that the paintings on the ships are made up of overlapping, swirling curves, with no beginning and no end, with no single focal point, with lines that flow into each other in unpredictable ways. From this, he deduces that the Commenori's tactical reflexes are based on constant movement, constant change, constant adaptation. They do not use fixed battle plans or rigid formations or predictable attack patterns. They move like the swirling lines in their art, flowing around obstacles, changing direction unexpectedly, adapting to every new situation in the moment. He also notices that every ship's painting includes a small, hidden symbol that is unique to the ship's captain, a mark that ties the entire composition together, even as the rest of the painting changes. From this, he deduces that, even though the Commenori have no formal military hierarchy, every raiding party has a single leader, a single focal point that holds the group together, even as their tactics shift and change. With these insights, Thrawn is able to map the Commenori's tactical reflexes perfectly and design a plan to stop their raids once and for all. He knows that the Commenori will never fall for a fixed trap or a predictable blockade because their tactical instincts are to adapt and flow around any obstacle. So he designs a trap that moves with them, that adapts to their changing tactics, that uses their own reflexes against them. He creates a series of fake supply convoys, each one with a hidden tracking beacon that the Commenori will be drawn to attack. He knows from their art that the Commenori will not just hit one convoy and run. They will flow from one target to the next, changing their attack pattern with every raid, never staying in one place for long. So he positions his Star Destroyers in a wide, flexible formation that can adapt to the Commenori's movements, that can encircle them no matter which direction they flow. He also knows from their art that every raiding party has a single leader, a single focal point that holds the group together. So he focuses his efforts on identifying and disabling the lead ship, the one with the unique captain symbol, knowing that once the leader is neutralized, the rest of the raiding party will lose cohesion and be easy to capture. The plan works perfectly. Thrawn stops the Commenori raids in a single operation, with minimal loss of Imperial life, minimal damage to his fleet, and almost no large-scale combat. He does it all by decoding the geometry of the Commenori's art and mapping it directly to their tactical reflexes. The second layer of Thrawn's system is his analysis of the link between a culture's preference for symmetry or chaos in their creative expression and their predictability under battlefield stress. This is a critical part of his tactical genius, because the most unpredictable part of any battle is how a commander will react when their plans fall apart, when they are under extreme stress, when they are facing defeat. Most commanders can follow a fixed battle plan when things are going well. But the true test of a commander is how they adapt when the battle does not go the way they expected. And Thrawn can predict exactly how a commander will react in that moment by looking at their culture's preference for symmetry or chaos in their art. Thrawn's theory is simple and proven correct time and time again. A culture that favors symmetry, order, and rigid structure in its art will favor the same qualities in its military tactics. These cultures will use fixed, symmetrical battle formations, rigid chains of command, and predictable, repeatable tactics. When their plans fall apart, when they are under stress, they will revert to the symmetrical, ordered structures that they are comfortable with. They will double down on their original plan, even when it is not working. They will be slow to adapt to unexpected changes, because chaos and unpredictability make them uncomfortable, even when it is the only way to win the battle. They are extremely predictable under stress, because their instinct is to return to order, to symmetry, to the structure they know, even if it leads to their defeat. On the other hand, a culture that favors chaos, asymmetry, and dynamic, unpredictable structure in its art will favor those same qualities in its military tactics. These cultures will use unconventional, asymmetrical tactics, flexible chains of command, and constantly changing battle plans. When their plans fall apart, when they are under stress, they will embrace the chaos, adapt to the new situation, and come up with new, unexpected tactics on the fly. They are extremely unpredictable under stress because their instinct is to flow with the chaos, to use it to their advantage, to break the rules of engagement to win the battle. We see this theory proven correct in the canonical novel Thrawn, during Thrawn's campaign against the insurgency on Batonn. The Batonnese people's art is defined by strict symmetry, order, and balance. Every painting, every sculpture, every piece of creative expression from the Batonnese people is perfectly symmetrical, with a fixed central focal point, with rigid, structured lines, with no room for chaos or unpredictability. From this, Thrawn deduces that the Batonnese insurgents will use symmetrical, ordered battle plans, that they will rely on fixed formations and predictable tactics, and that when they are under stress, they will revert to that symmetrical structure, even when it is not working. He knows that they will be extremely predictable under battlefield stress, because their cultural instinct is to return to order and symmetry, no matter what. Thrawn uses this insight to devastating effect during the campaign. He launches a series of small attacks that disrupt the symmetry of the insurgents' battle plans, that force them into chaotic, unpredictable situations where their natural instincts work against them. Every time the insurgents' plans are disrupted, they do not adapt, or change their tactics, or embrace the chaos. They double down on their original, symmetrical plan, trying to force the battle back into the ordered structure they are comfortable with, even as Thrawn's forces tear them apart. This makes them completely predictable, and Thrawn is able to defeat them in a matter of days, with minimal loss of life on his own side. In contrast, we see Thrawn face off against a culture that favors chaos and asymmetry in their art. In Star Wars Rebels Season 4, when he fights the Mandalorian clan Wren on the planet Crownest. Mandalorian art is defined by dynamic, asymmetrical compositions, bold, chaotic lines, and a rejection of rigid, traditional structures. Mandalorian art celebrates individualism, courage, and adaptability, the same qualities that define Mandalorian combat. From this, Thrawn deduces that the Mandalorian warriors will use asymmetrical, unconventional tactics, that they will adapt to every change in the battle, that they will embrace chaos and use it to their advantage, that they will be extremely unpredictable under stress. He knows that they will never follow a fixed battle plan for long, that they will always find a way to turn his strength against him, that they will never revert to a rigid structure when things go wrong. This knowledge changes everything about how Thrawn approaches the battle. He does not set a fixed trap or use a symmetrical battle formation because he knows the Mandalorians will easily adapt to it and turn it against him. Instead, he designs a flexible, ever-changing battle plan that can adapt to the Mandalorians' movements, that uses their own love of chaos against them. He does not try to force the battle into a rigid, ordered structure. He embraces the chaos and controls it, leading the Mandalorians into a series of situations where their own adaptability becomes their greatest weakness. Even though the Mandalorians are some of the greatest warriors in the galaxy, Thrawn is able to gain the upper hand in the battle because he understands their predictability in their unpredictability. He knows that they will always adapt, always change, always embrace the chaos, and he uses that knowledge to control the flow of the battle, even when he cannot predict their exact moves. The third and final layer of Thrawn's system is his ability to identify the aesthetic vulnerabilities that signal a leader's inability to adapt to unconventional maneuvers. This is where Thrawn finds the fatal flaw in every enemy commander, the blind spot that will lead to their defeat, no matter how skilled they are, no matter how large their fleet is, no matter how much firepower they have. Every commander has a limit to their adaptability, a line they will not cross, a set of tactics they will never use, a way of fighting that they will never embrace. And Thrawn can see that limit, that vulnerability, in their aesthetic choices, long before they ever step onto the battlefield. An aesthetic vulnerability, as Thrawn defines it, is a choice in a piece of art that reveals a hard limit in the artist's mind, a boundary they will not cross, a way of thinking that they cannot embrace. For example, an artist who always uses soft, rounded shapes and never uses sharp, angular lines is revealing a psychological discomfort with aggression, with confrontation, with direct action. An artist who always paints within the lines, who never breaks the rules of traditional composition, is revealing an inability to embrace unconventional, outside-the-box thinking. An artist who always centers their composition on a single, heroic figure and never paints groups or collective action is revealing a belief in hierarchical, top-down leadership and an inability to adapt to decentralized guerrilla tactics. These are aesthetic vulnerabilities. They reveal the things that the artist cannot or will not do, the blind spots they cannot see, the boundaries they will not cross. And for Thrawn, these vulnerabilities are the key to victory. Because if you know what a commander cannot do, what they will not adapt to, what tactics they will never expect, you can use those tactics to defeat them every single time. We see this perfectly in Star Wars Rebels, Season 3, Episode 15, Through Imperial Eyes, when Thrawn faces off against Governor Pryce and Admiral Constantine, two of the Empire's most senior leaders on Lothal. Thrawn has studied the official Imperial art that lines the walls of the Lothal government complex, art that was commissioned by Pryce and Constantine, that reflects their personal aesthetic preferences and leadership styles. The art is rigid, formal, symmetrical, and completely traditional. It follows every rule of Imperial propaganda art, with no creativity, no unconventional choices, no breaking of the established norms. From this, Thrawn identifies a critical aesthetic vulnerability in both Pryce and Constantine. They are completely unable to adapt to unconventional maneuvers, to think outside the rigid rules and regulations of the Imperial military, to embrace tactics that break the established norms of warfare. They will always follow the Imperial playbook, always rely on overwhelming firepower, always use the same rigid tactics, no matter what the rebels do. This is their fatal vulnerability, and Thrawn uses it against them to test the rebels' tactics and to expose the weaknesses in the Imperial command structure on Lothal. He knows that Pryce and Constantine will never adapt to the rebels' unconventional guerrilla tactics, that they will always make the same predictable mistakes, that they will never see the rebels' traps coming. And he has proven correct, time and time again, as Pryce and Constantine are outmaneuvered by the rebels again and again, because they cannot adapt to the rebels' unconventional tactics. Another example of this is found in the canonical novel Thrawn, Alliances, when Thrawn faces off against the Grysk clan leader, who is leading an invasion force into the galaxy. Thrawn studies the art and cultural artifacts of the Grysk clan, and he notices that all of their art is focused on the clan's collective strength, with no focus on individual achievement, no celebration of individual heroism. Every piece of art centers the clan as a whole, with no single figure standing out, no individual highlighted as a leader or a hero. From this, Thrawn identifies a critical aesthetic vulnerability in the clan leader. He is completely unable to adapt to tactics that target him as an individual, that separate him from the clan, that force him to act on his own, outside of the collective structure of the clan. The Grysk's entire identity is tied to the collective, and the clan leader cannot function, cannot make decisions, cannot adapt when he is separated from the group. This is his fatal vulnerability, and Thrawn uses it to defeat the entire invasion force. He designs a maneuver that separates the clan leader from his troops, that forces him into a position where he has to act as an individual, outside of the clan's collective structure. The clan leader freezes, unable to adapt, unable to make a decision, and his entire invasion force falls apart as a result. Thrawn wins the battle without firing a single shot, all because he identified the aesthetic vulnerability in the clan leader's art and used it to exploit his inability to adapt to an unconventional maneuver. In the end, decoding the geometry of Conquest is about seeing what no one else can. Where other commanders see only a painting, a sculpture, a piece of art, Thrawn sees a complete map of the enemy's mind. He sees their tactical reflexes, their predictability under stress, their fatal vulnerabilities, all written into the brushstrokes, the lines, the shapes, the symmetry, and chaos of the art. He turns creative expression into a tactical weapon, a blueprint for victory, a way to win wars before they even begin. This is the genius of Thrawn. He does not just fight battles. He decodes the very geometry of the enemy's mind and uses it to shape the outcome of the conflict, long before the first shot is ever fired. And he does it all by studying art, by seeing the battle in the brushstrokes, by finding the victory in the curve of a sculpture, by decoding the geometry of Conquest.